On a cold December morning in 2009, a young mother vanished without a trace from her Utah home. Her children were left confused. Her husband, suspiciously calm. The story that would unfold in the following years would horrify the nation, uncovering obsession, control, and finally, a fiery act of unspeakable evil. This is the tragic and chilling case of Susan Cox Powell. It was December 7, 2009, when coworkers and friends became concerned. Susan Powell, a 28-year-old mother of two, didn't show up for work. She hadn't called in sick. She didn't drop her boys off at daycare. And her phone was going straight to voicemail. At her West Valley City, Utah home, silence. Friends rushed over. The house was locked. No signs of struggle. But something was wrong. Inside, they found Susan's purse, her wallet, and her car keys. But no Susan. Her husband, Josh Powell, and their two sons, Charlie and Braden, were also missing. Later that afternoon, Josh returned home with the children in tow and a bizarre explanation. He had taken the boys camping in the desert in freezing temperatures at 12:30 in the morning. He said he didn't realize it was Monday, that he thought it was Sunday. That's why he missed work. Police weren't buying it. As detectives dug deeper into Susan's life, the mask of the Powell family's suburban normalcy began to crack. Susan had been keeping a secret, a diary documenting her increasingly troubled marriage. Josh, her husband, was described by friends as controlling, narcissistic, and emotionally abusive. He monitored her spending, her calls, even her interactions with neighbors. Susan's friend Kiersey Helluel later said Susan had grown afraid of Josh. She was planning to leave him. In one chilling entry, Susan wrote, "If I die, it may not be an accident, even if it looks like one." Susan had even drafted a will, hidden it in a safe deposit box, and confided in close friends that if anything ever happened to her, it would be because of Josh. And there was something even more disturbing lurking in the background. Josh's father, Stephen Powell, was obsessed with Susan. Back in 2003, when Josh and Susan had briefly lived with his parents in Washington state, Stephen Powell became infatuated with his daughter-in-law. And not just in a passive, admiring way. He secretly recorded her, filmed her in the bathroom, stole her underwear, and even wrote love songs about her. He kept journals describing her in disturbing, sexualized terms. In 2011, police searched Stephen Powell's home and found more than 4,500 explicit images and videos, many secretly recorded. Stephen was arrested for voyeurism and child pornography and sent to prison. But that wasn't all they found. Inside the Powell home, police discovered a hidden cache of Susan's personal belongings, her childhood keepsakes, clothes, and photos, things Josh had claimed were long gone. Despite mounting evidence, there was still no physical proof that Josh had harmed Susan. No body, no confession, no murder weapon, but the pressure was building. Josh lost custody of his children after his father's arrest. The state of Washington granted Susan's parents, Chuck and Judy Cox, temporary custody of Charlie and Braden. The boys, growing older, began revealing dark glimpses of what they might have witnessed. In one supervised visit, 5-year-old Charlie said, "Mommy was in the trunk. She didn't come back." Investigators believed the boys had witnessed part of what happened the night Susan vanished, but they were still too young to clearly articulate it. Social workers warned that Josh Powell was growing more erratic, that he might snap. On February 5, 2012, just days after a judge ruled to permanently remove the children from Josh's custody, he was granted one final supervised visit with Charlie and Braden. The social worker, Elizabeth Griffin Hall, arrived with the boys at his rented home in Graham, Washington. Josh greeted them at the door. The boys ran ahead, but as the social worker tried to follow, Josh slammed the door in her face. Panicked, she pounded on the door, called 911, reported the incident immediately. Then the house exploded. A massive fireball erupted from the home. Flames consumed the structure within minutes. Josh Powell had murdered his two sons, poured gasoline throughout the house, and set it ablaze. Autopsies would reveal that both boys were attacked with a hatchet before being overcome by smoke. The public was outraged. How could this have been allowed to happen? There had been warnings, red flags, documented concerns from social workers, but the system had failed. Charlie and Braden Powell, just 7 and 5 years old, became the final victims in a tragedy that began the night their mother disappeared. Josh Powell's motive was chillingly clear: control. If he couldn't have his family, no one could. To this day, Susan Powell's body has never been found, but investigators believe they know what happened. They suspect that on the night of December 6, 2009, Josh Powell murdered Susan, possibly with a blunt object or suffocation, and hid her body in a remote location. Some believe he may have disposed of her remains in an abandoned mine shaft or a deep lake in Utah's West Desert. Searches have turned up nothing, but one thing is certain: Susan never would have willingly left her children. In the wake of the tragedy, Susan's parents, Chuck and Judy Cox, dedicated their lives to child welfare reform. They fought for Charlie and Braden's Law, which strengthens laws around supervised visitation and child protection. They also established the Susan Cox Powell Foundation, aimed at helping families in crisis escape domestic violence. This wasn't just a story of a missing person. It was a story of manipulation, systemic failure, and generational trauma. The Powell case shows us how obsession can spread like poison. Stephen Powell's sexual fixation on Susan, Josh Powell's need for absolute control, their family's chilling silence in the face of abuse. The darkness didn't end with Susan's disappearance, consumed her sons, and it shook a nation to its core. The horror of this case lies not just in the crimes, but in the years of missed warnings, of a woman crying out for help in silence. If you or someone you know is experiencing domestic abuse, don't wait. Reach out. Speak up. There are people who care and want to help. Susan Cox Powell's voice was silenced, but her story lives on not just as a tragedy, but as a warning. Remember her name. Remember Charlie. Remember Braden. And remember that behind every smiling family photo, a darker story might be waiting to be told.